Welcome everyone, and a big thank you for participating and attending the third gathering of our alternative Human Rights Expo, organized by the Gulf Center for Human Rights with other 24 partners. My name is Khalid Ibrahim, originally from Iraq, the Executive Director of the Gulf Center for Human Rights. Unfortunately, my colleague Waham Youssef was unable to co-host. I will be co-hosting this event together with my colleague Marwa Fatah from Palestine.
Hi Khalid, and hello everyone. My name is Marwa Fatah. As Khalid mentioned, I'm honored to be the co-host of the third iteration of this event. I'm a Palestinian digital rights advocate living in Germany. I lead Access Now's work as the MENA Policy and Advocacy Director for the Middle East and North Africa region. And for those who don't know us, we are a grassroots to global organization whose mission is to defend and extend the rights of people and communities at risk. While we wait for more people to join, I'll invite you all to watch a video by Tabiba of a song called Marhaba, which means hello or welcome in Arabic. And Tabiba means a female doctor or healer in Arabic. And it's a new multi-generational Arab women's drum and vocal ensemble made up of world music artists. Rula Saeed from Palestine, Lin Hamou from Syria, Mariam Hassan Toller from Egypt, Antara Monica from Iraq, and the band Tabiba mixes the colors of their voices, traditions, and inspirations to make music medicine. And Marhaba, this song was performed by Tabiba and filmed at the Neruda Arts in Ontario, Canada in March earlier this year.
You can take it from here, okay?
Ya marhaba, which means hello, greetings to you. يا فرحة حلت علينا وشعشعت بالدار بقدوم أحبابنا فاضت بها الأنوار يا ميت هلا ومرحبا وتشرفونا اليوم صاروا صحاب الأرض وحنا لهم زوار وحنا لهم زوار ويا مرحبا زوارنا يا مرحبا يا مرحبا يوم اللفوع ديارنا يا مرحبا يا مرحبا يا مرحبا زوارنا يا مرحبا يا مرحبا يوم اللفوع ديارنا يا مرحبا يا مرحبا
That was beautiful. Thanks to the women of Tabiba for sharing their beautiful music with us to play for you at the Alternative Human Rights Expo III. I'll pass it now to you, Khaled.
Thank you a lot, Marwa. My name is Khalid Ibrahim. I am the Executive Director of the Gulf Center for Human Rights, which has organized this event with 29 human rights partners. This event follows the success of our previous two alternative human rights expos, held with dozens of partners in 2021 and 2023. The proceeding is similar in nature to the previous event. The prisoner and the pen held in 2020 with Amnesty Westminster Bayswater, which provides support each year. Today's event is not an entertainment event. It is rather of a cathartic and awareness-raising nature. We are aiming to show the reality of the human rights defenders we work with and support and showcase their poetry, art, and literature to unveil the injustice they have been subjected to and allow them the space to share their own stories with their own words or any art form they may choose. Now let me introduce my co-host Marwa Fatafta.
Thank you, Khaled, and thank you again, everyone, for joining us. As noted by Khaled, this event is not an entertainment show, but a sober reminder of the gruesome reality which human rights defenders, artists, journalists, and dissidents in our region are actively working to change. For this purpose, I was tasked with laying the landscape and giving a regional overview. And of course, I cannot but start with the heart-wrenching situation in Gaza, described as hell on earth, children's graveyard, an apocalypse, and a place where all international norms and rules have vanished, or rather have been flagrantly violated by Israel for 14 months now. Over 44,000 have been recorded killed, with many more buried beneath the rubble, and over 105,000 injured, and more than 70% of Gaza lies in rubble now. And now in the winter, the human suffering is worsening as people are starving, cold, and with no shelter except some makeshift tents. And yesterday, I'm sure many of you have seen the news that 10,000 of these tents were destroyed or blown away by wind and rain. The impunity Israel was afforded, or still afforded, by Western powers had put Lebanon next in line. Over 4,000 people have been killed, over 1.3 million forcibly displaced, and many villages in southern Lebanon were completely erased by Israeli bombs. I truly hope that the ceasefire that started today holds. And those of us who are not embroiled in war and genocidal violence are facing the rising tide of authoritarianism across the region, made possible by an arsenal of repressive tools, from the weaponization of draconian laws such as the cybercrime and counterterrorism laws to detain and prosecute human rights defenders and activists for peacefully exercising their rights, to the use of commercially available spyware and surveillance technologies to monitor our communications and activities. In Saudi Arabia, under the facade of economic and social reforms, dissidents and activists who dare to speak out and criticize the government are systematically punished and prosecuted. A handful of peaceful tweets are sufficient to land you in prison for 45 years, as the case of Noor al-Qahtani, or even put you on death row, as was the case with a retired school teacher, Mohammed bin Nasser al-Ghamdi, who had less than 10 followers on Twitter. In Egypt, the human rights situation also remains dire. The Egyptian government continues to criminalize and punish peaceful dissent, equating it with terrorism. Thousands of detainees remained locked up in dire conditions, in lengthy pretrial detention, or in trumped-up charges levied during unjust trials. And those who served their completed sentences, such as Ala Abdel Fattah or Huda Abdel Mun'am, remain unjustly imprisoned through case rotation or disrespect to the rule of law and due process. Meanwhile, in Tunisia, President Qais Said is entrenching his one-man rule after he won a second term this October with slightly over 90% of the vote. Civic space in the country is rapidly shrinking. Activists and human rights defenders face arbitrary detention for their speech online under a draconian cybercrime decree, while civil society organizations are hit by administrative harassment, interrogations, and office raids. We will delve more into those country-specific cases and details with our guest tonight. And first, we'll turn the spotlight on Saudi Arabia. And for that, please join me in welcoming Taha Al-Hajj, a lawyer and a human rights defender who is the legal director of the European Saudi Organization for Human Rights. Taha is a lawyer who spent his life defending his clients, among them children who face the risk of execution in Saudi Arabia. And in reprisal for his work, he was forced to leave the country and now lives in exile. Taha, the floor is yours.
لك وشكرا شكرا
Thank you very
جزيلا على
much
هذه
for this
الكلمة.
introduction.
أتحدث عن وضع
I will
المدافعين عن
speak
حقوق
about the
الإنسان في
situation
السعودية.
of human rights defenders
تتحدث
in Saudi
السعودية عن
Arabia.
الإصلاحات
Saudi
والانفتاح
Arabia talks about
وتروج
reforms
له
and
بقوة
openness
أموال
and
النفط
great transformation
وعبر الشركات العلاقات
promoted by the
العامة
power of
وتخطف
oil money
أبصار العالم
through
ببريق
public
نجوم
relations
الرياضة
companies and
والفن والمشاريع الضخمة.
through
تظن أنها بذلك تخفي حقيقة
sports
القمع
stars
والاستبداد الذي
and arts
كرسته
and mega
للقضاء على
projects,
مؤسسات
thinking
المجتمع
that
المدني.
this
لم
will
تبقى
hide
أي
the reality of
منظمة
repression and
حقوقية تعمل
tyranny
في الداخل. كل
that it has
أعضائها أما في
devoted to
السجن
eliminating
أو
civil society.
مهجرين أو تحت الإقامة الجبرية ومراقبة.
No human rights
بالغت
organizations
السعودية في
working
الضغط على المدافعات
inside
والمدافعين عن
Saudi
حقوق
Arabia
الإنسان
is active and the members are
وتهدف من
either in
ذلك
prisons or are displaced.
لترهيب
The
الآخرين
government
وتكويم
has
أفواههم لمن يرى أن في نشطاء حقوق الإنسان
practiced extreme pressures on women human rights
لمن يرى في
defenders.
نشطاء حقوق الإنسان قدوة لكل صوت حار. سيدة
A
ناجحة
successful
ومؤمنة
woman
بقضايا كتبت عنها بكل
who
رقي
believes
ووضوح
in
مثل
a
سلمى
cause
الشهاب
of human
تعتقل
rights
وتدمر
has
مسيرتها
written
الأكاديمية
with all
والمهنية
sophistication and
فقط
clarity,
لأنها
such as
عبرت عن
Salma
رأيها.
al-Shihab was
نور
arrested
القحطاني
and her
سيدة
academic career was
سجنت
destroyed
مدة
all
تساوي
because
سنوات عمرها
she
التي
expressed her
عاشتها
opinion.
لأنها كانت
Another human
كتبت
rights defender,
كلمات
Noura
لم تروق
al-Qahtani,
للجلاد. مناهل العتيبي
was
أيضا
handed
شابة صدقت
a
رواية الرؤية
verdict
واعتقدت أنها يمكن
equal
أن
to the
تعيش
numbers
كما تريد
to the number
وتعبر
of
عما
years she
يجول
has lived
بخاطرها
because she
علنا.
wrote
وجدت
something that the
نفسها تضرب
executioners
وتطعن
did not
خلف
like.
القضبان.
Manahel
تعتقل السلطات
al-Otaibi is a
السعودية
young woman who
كتاب
believed
مثل
the
أسامة
narrative
خالد
of the
وزياد
Saudi vision
السفياني
and thought that she
كاتباء
could live as she
الويكيبيديا
wanted and
وتعادي
express
المفكرين
whatever
والباحثين
was on her mind
والنشطاء
publicly.
بل وتطالب
Now she is
بإعدامهم
behind
في بعض
bars.
الحالات كما هو في قضية
Saudi Arabia
المفكر
arrests
حسن
writers
فرحان
such as
المالكي
Osama
أو الشيخ
Khalid
سلمان
and Ziad
العودة
al-Sufyani,
وعوض
who are
القردي
writers
ومجموعة آخرين.
for Wikipedia,
وصل الأمر
and
بالنيابة
equates
العامة إلى
intellectuals,
أن تطالب
researchers, and
بقتل المدافعات
activists with
عن حقوق
terrorists.
الإنسان. وكان
The public
ذلك واضحا
prosecution has
بقضية
went as far as
إسراء
demanding the
الغمغام
execution of
التي
defenders,
أنقذتها
as was
الجهود
the case of
المكثفة من المنظمات
Isra
وجهود
al-Ghumgham,
المناصرة
because of the
وإلى أن
moodiness
تغير
and
الحكم.
ambiguity of the laws and provisions that depend on the judge's discretion in a country
هذا
where there
التشدد
is not yet a
والقمع
constitution
بسبب
or a
المزاجية
clear and
وسوء
accurate
القوانين
penal code,
وغموضها في بعض الأحيان
and the
وغيابها
absence
في
of
أحيان
the
أخرى.
judiciary makes usually makes it
وذلك
hamper
أدى
with the
لصدور أحكام
freedoms and
تعتمد
lives
على
of defenders
تقدير القاضي في دولة لا يوجد فيها لا
and
دستور ولا
activists.
قانون ولا قانون عقوبات واضح ودقيق. وغياب العدالة يجعلها
a situation where
وحياة
justice is
المدافعين عن
absent
حقوق الإنسان.
and human rights violations are commonplace.
فالانتهاكات لا تحل ولا تخفى بالتصريحات
And these
الرنانة
violations cannot be covered by the facade of
التي
reform
تقوم بها
that
السعودية.
Saudi Arabia
المشاكل
continues to carry out.
عفوا أن الغسيل الرياضي والثقافي لا يحل المشاكل
Sports
ولا
and
ينهي
cultural
الانتهاكات.
washing cannot
ولذلك يجب
cover up
مواجهة السعودية ورفع الأصوات
this
وفضح هذه
dire
الانتهاكات
situation.
بمشاركة
Therefore,
المنظمات والأصوات الحرة
the terrible human rights
لإظهار
reality in Saudi
الحقيقة
Arabia must be
ومساعدة
revealed
المدافعين
with the support
والمنظمات
of
في داخل السعودية
NGOs and human rights
للتحرك
organizations
بحرية أكثر.
in
شكراً
Saudi
لكم.
Arabia and abroad. Thank you.
شكرا طه. Thank you, Taha. And despite this well-documented repression, Saudi Arabia is in fact scheduled to host the Internet Governance Forum in Riyadh this December, which, for those who don't know what the IGF is, it's a multi-stakeholder space for discussions about the future of the internet, tech policy, and internet freedoms. And since we cannot let Saudi Arabia get away with using yet another international forum to whitewash its dismal human rights record, I'd take this opportunity as a co-host to mention a campaign that Access Now is doing in partnership with Al-Qist and Amnesty International, all partners in our event today, to demand the release of Saudi human rights defenders and activists, including those mentioned by Taha, Salma al-Shihab, Noor al-Qahtani, Manahil al-Utaybi, as well as Usama Khalid and Ziad al-Sufyani, the two imprisoned Saudi Wikipedians. You can see some of their images on the screen here, although we don't have a photo of Noura, unfortunately. All of those individuals are serving decades in prison. Salma and Noura are facing the harshest sentences of several decades each. Now, next, we will move to Palestine. And as we do every year, we would like to show some of the work of Palestinian artists. But the art we'll show this year has, unfortunately, a tragic backdrop. A great tragedy is that all the art shown at the Alternative Human Rights Expo last year from inside Palestine is gone, including the work of Hiba Zaqqut, which now only exists in online images. Hiba herself was killed on the 13th of October last year in an Israeli airstrike that killed her and two of her 4 children. This is sadly the fate of many Palestinian artists in Gaza. They lost their work, and we lost them. So many artists have died in Gaza, including Palestinian digital artist Mahasin al-Khatib, the artist who created the viral artwork of We Are Burning, which you can see on the screen. She was killed by Israeli forces on the 18th of October this year in Jabalia refugee camp, just hours after posting her final artwork in memory of the 19-year-old Sha'ban al-Dalu, who was burnt alive by Israeli airstrikes on a hospital ground. Some of the images we're showing of Mahasin's work are, as I mentioned, the one on the left is the image We Are Burning, portraying Sha'ban al-Dalu, a portrait of Mahasin, and a third image under the title, And Because We Are the Children of This Earth and Its Roots, We Will Try Again and Again Just for Her. And in Arabic, ولأننا أبناء هذه الأرض وجذورها سنحاول مرارا وتكرارا لأجلها فقط. And the one to the right is under the name We're Still Resisting. May she rest in peace. Mahasin made digital portraits of many people she met, from doctors to journalists and children, while documenting life and death in Gaza. We'd also like to commemorate the life and work of another legendary Palestinian artist, Fathi al-Ghabn, who died in February this year at the age of 77 due to health complications after he was prevented from leaving Gaza to get medical care. His last words in an interview from a hospital that went viral were, "All I ask for is to breathe." And finally, we have some art from Malak Matar, another Palestinian artist who joined the first Alternative Human Rights Expo back in 2021. She has been showing her mural, No Words, her largest painting completed in 2024 around the world. The painting, which evokes Picasso's Guernica, is part of her exhibition Last Breath. She has also released a children's book called City's Bird, which tells a very personal story. And now I will hand over to Khalid to speak about the UAE and read us some poetry. Over to you, Khalid.
Thank you a lot, Marwa. Now I will speak about the United Arab Emirates, where my friend and colleague Ahmed Mansour is serving 25 years in prison. For those who don't know who Ahmed Mansour is, he is an Emirati poet, engineer, and a prominent human rights defender. He is a board member of the Gulf Center for Human Rights and the Human Rights Watch, and the winner of the 2015 Martin Annals Award for Human Rights Defenders. He was a key member of the literary magazine Ru'a Visions between 89 and 91, and one of the founders of the literary group Al-Shahadin Beggars in Emirates in the year 89. His first poetry collection, Beyond the Failure, was published in 2007 and contains 29 texts in which all of the human suffering and torment and the perplexing hardship he is going through are manifested. He is currently, as I said, serving an unjust 10-year prison sentence for his peaceful human rights activities handed down on the 29th of May 2018, following his arrest on the 20th of March 2017. He is still in solitary confinement since his arrest. He was the last human rights defender working publicly for human rights in UAE. In July 2024, he was sentenced to another 15 years as part of the notorious UAE 84 case. GCHR and Emirates Detainees Advocacy Center published a report in July, Unfair Trial in the United Arab Emirates illustrates total disregard for international law, which provides detailed information on the UAE 84 case. We have also carried out joint actions with many human rights partners. Many of those sentenced on the 10th of July 2024 had been due for release in 2023. Prominent human rights defenders Abdeslam Darwish al-Marzouqi, Sultan ibn Qaid al-Qasimi, Dr. Muhammad al-Rukn, Dr. Muhammad al-Mansouri, and Sheikh Muhammad Abdel-Razzaq al-Siddiq were among 43 people sentenced to life in prison, which is tantamount to 25 years in prison. Dr. Nasser bin Ghaith was also sentenced to 15 years in prison, along with our colleague Ahmed Mansour. Now we will show a clip that filmmaker Mano Loksh prepared for our event today from her upcoming documentary film on the Emirates, which features Ahmed Mansour, whom she interviewed in the UAE before his arrest. Let's listen to Ahmed's words. His poem is also incorporated into the clip. Thank you.
You know, I was born in a small village on the northern part of the United Arab Emirates, even before the foundation of this country, before UAE becomes officially a United Arab Emirates. Of course, there are so many things developed in the country since then, but we always have that kind of, you know, feeling to the childhood and the open space.
Now I will read a poem by Ahmed Mansour in Arabic. It's called Final Choice. خيار أخير. ليس لي من وسيلة الآن سوى الصمت المطبق عند الساحة العامة أو عند الممرات، فقد جربت كل شيء، الصراخ والهتافات واللافتة، اعتراض الطريق والاستلقاء أرضا أمام الطوابير، رشق المراكب بالبيض والطماطم وإشعال الإطارات، وقذف الزجاجات الحارقة والحجارة، التعري أمام الملأ ونحت عبارات على الجسد، لبس الأقنعة والمشي أمام الكاميرات، التسربل بالأغلال وربط السلاسل بأسوار الحدائق، ابتلاع أمواس صدئة وبرادة زجاج، جز الأصابع بساطور وشق نفسي بعواميد الإنارة، رش الكيروسين على الجسد وإضرام النار فيه، رش الكيروسين على الجسد وإضرام النار فيه، جربت كل ذلك ولم ألتفت، هذه المرة قسما لن أنطق أو أتحرك، سأبقى هكذا حتى تلتفت أو أتحنط. We also have a video made by Mano Loksh prepared for this event, and this also focus on Ahmed's poem The Rose at the Door, which is read in Arabic with English on the screen.
وردة الباب التي رفعت لها قبعتي مداعبا هذا الصباح فاجأتني بانثناءة عذبة عندما مرقت حبيبتي في المساء.
Thank you so much to Mano Loksh for sharing this clip from her film, documentary film. and creating the video of the poem. It is really powerful to see Ahmed speaking, and we hope he will be free soon. Always we are hopeful, along with other human rights defenders who are detained in UAE and elsewhere, who are serving long sentences for their peaceful human rights work. Now we have a short campaign video. We have a short campaign video about Dr. Mohammed al-Rukun, created by the Emirates Detainees Advocacy Center as part of the UAE 84 campaign. Dr. al-Rukun is an award-winning human rights lawyer. I know him personally, a very reliable defender who has been wrongfully tried and sentenced to prison in both the UAE 94 and UAE 84 cases. Although his 10-year sentence ended in July 2022, he was not released. On the 10th of July 2024, Dr. al-Rukun was sentenced to life in prison in the UAE 84 jail. It is really shocking. Dr. al-Rukun is an courageous, really, a courageous defender who put all his efforts to defend citizens' rights. He is also an Amnesty International prisoner of conscience and was a finalist for the 2014 Frontline Defenders Award. From prison, he sent this message: I am an optimist by nature. Always I found him with a smile. I am an optimist by nature. I imagine that the future is built on the idea of human rights and its culture. He who does not feel that he lives in a free society that makes him feel equal to others will feel that his humanity is incomplete. There is a saying that in a confrontation between the river and the rock, the river always wins, not because of its strength, but because of its perseverance. Those working for human rights in the GCC region are not strong, but they have perseverance. Now let's watch this short video by the EDAC.
Now we'll turn to another human rights defender who's been unjustly imprisoned, Egyptian activist and revolutionary icon Ala Abdel Fattah, the first blogger to be arrested in the region. He was due for release on the 29th of September this year, and instead of walking free among us now, he remains behind bars. His mother, Layla, has now been on hunger strike for almost 60 days, calling for his release. For those who don't know Ala, he is a human rights activist, software developer, and blogger. In November 2011, he was arrested on charges of assaulting military vehicles, but he was found innocent. 2 years after, he was arrested on a charge of allegedly organizing a political protest without a permit. He was eventually sentenced to 5 years. He was released in March 2019, but with a surveillance sentence of a further 5 years, to be locked up in a police station every night from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. the following day. On the 29th of September 2019, Ala was rearrested from inside the police station following a crackdown on protests that erupted that month. Much of his writing was smuggled out of his various cells and forms his book, You Have Not Been Defeated, released in October 2021. Here with us tonight to update us on Ala's situation in prison and read from his work is his aunt Ahdaf Swaif. Ahdaf is the author of, among many other titles, the best-selling book The Map of Love and Cairo, A City Transformed, her account of the Egyptian Revolution of 2011. She is also a political and cultural commentator. In 2007, she founded the Palestine Festival of Literature, PALFest. Out of that, she co-edited This Is Not a Border, Reportage and Reflections from Palestine, or the Palestine Festival of Literature in 2017. Ahdaf was the first recipient of the Mahmoud Darwish Award in 2010 and received the European Cultural Foundation's 2019 Princess Margaret Award. Ahdaf, the floor is yours. Thank you for joining us.
Hi. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's good to be with you, although it is sad that we have to continue doing this year after year. And of course, we are always hopeful that that by next year things might improve and some of the people that we speak about might have won their freedom. I think you've given a very full account of the situation with Ala. Ala continues to be in prison, even though he served his 5 years on the 29th of September. But the authorities tell us that the 2 years and 3 months that he was held in pretrial detention will not be considered as part of the time that he has served, and that therefore he has another 2 years and 3 months to do. This is, of course, completely against the law and against what has been generally happening, what is the norm in Egypt. And so because of that, my sister, Layla, his mother, has gone on hunger strike. Today is her 60th day, and she keeps repeating that she will not back down. She is trying to interest the British in her case because Ala is a dual nationality citizen. So we're trying to bring pressure on the government in Egypt, both through acts of goodwill domestically, people talking about clemency and about just like whatever he's being punished for, 10 years is enough. And trying to get the British government to appeal to their friends in Egypt, because they are friendly governments, to appeal to them to let him go. So that's where we are. And as we're here tonight, I thought I would read you, I think, 3 passages by him from his book, You Have Not Yet Been Defeated, which was made up of his articles that were written mostly while he was in prison, but sometimes when he was under surveillance. But also the book is made up of his a selection, of course, of his Facebook posts and his tweets. So basically, I will start with this. This is a piece or a passage that was written in Arabic, and so this is the translation of it into English, since I understand that English is our language of preference tonight. So this is the 13th of October, 2014, and it's let me just see. Yeah. 13th of October 2014. Anyone who tells you that the solution is to apply the law is bullshitting you. The solution is to apply the law to the strong before the weak, to the rich before the poor, to the boss before the doorman. And that's on condition that the law is consented to by society, particularly by those most affected by it, and has been formulated through a democratic process. And on condition that the law does not infringe on the basic rights and freedoms of the individual, and on condition that the law is logical, comprehensible, accessible to people, and known to them before its application, not an ambush that's set for them. And on condition that whoever the law is applied to has access to a fair, unbiased trial that's not rigged, rushed, or repeatedly delayed. And on condition that whoever is subject to the law has the opportunity to change the law and can challenge it on the basis of whether or not it meets standards of public consent and protection of basic rights. And these must be real opportunities. And on condition that the agents of the law are subject to oversight and held accountable and are accepted by those most affected by the law. There are many conditions before applying the law is a solution to anything, but it would be enough to start by applying it to the president before the students. So that kind of gives an idea of the kind of discourse that comes to naturally, I would say almost unavoidably even, to Alaa, and I suppose that has made him problematic to authority. So the next passage is based on a well-known line that is used in the chants in Arab countries. عمر السجن ما غير فكرة، عمر القهر ما أخر بكرة. Prison can't change what you know, and tyranny can't hold back tomorrow. It's true that the future won't be held back by prison. Time for the prisoner stops, but outside the prison walls, it races ahead. Your kids grow up and need school fees that you've got no idea how to provide while you're locked up. Your mother or your father gets sick and could die. Your work is disrupted and delayed, and people won't hold your job for you for too long. And just as oppression wastes tomorrow rather than holding it back, so prison impedes the development of ideas rather than changing them. Do you really think that captives whose basic rights have been ignored and whose children's blood has been shed will reevaluate their ideas, their choices, their leaders? That they will reconsider their discourse, however sectarian and catastrophic? Why? What good would it do them while they're ossified in prison? And where are they supposed to get new ideas when they're denied access to all media, in solitary confinement, and sometimes denied visits? On the 19th of October 2014, a tweet: "The death of a state is an ugly thing. God only knows if society can survive it." And then on the 26th of October 2014, again a tweet: "Keep sitting silently watching us be imprisoned one by one, and the students getting killed one by one. Keep sitting silently until the disaster comes knocking on your front door." And the final passage that I will read is an address. He wrote it in English, an address to RightsCon conference, which is a conference of techies held in San Francisco, and it's at the intersection of technology and human rights. In 2011, Alaa attended it for the last time, In 2017, he wrote this letter, which was read at RightsCon on the 13th of April, written from Torah prison and delivered in San Francisco on the 13th of April, 2017. I don't have much to say by way of advice. I am, after all, out of touch and slightly outdated. The best I can do is repeat themes I used to touch upon when participating in conferences like these in the past. The last time was 2011, I think. Number one, fix your own democracy. This has always been my answer to the question, how can we help? I still believe it's the only possible answer. Not only is where you live, work, vote, pay tax, and organize the place where you have more influence, but a setback for human rights in a place where democracy has deep roots is certain to be used as an excuse for even worse violations in societies where rights are more fragile. I trust recent events made it evident that there is much that needs fixing. I look forward to being inspired by how you go about it. That's the end, but I imagine that more than ever now, we see the aptness of Alaa's words as democracy in democratic countries gets eroded because of support for Israel's war on Gaza and then on Lebanon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ahdaf. I was actually present when Alaa's letter was read in 2017. We're really crossing our fingers and working very hard to amplify Alaa's case, and we really hope to see him free soon. And now let's turn to Bahrain, and I'll hand the mic to you, Khalid.
Thank you a lot, Marwa, and it is really too sad to see that Alaa is still in a prison on fabricated charges. He early completed his sentence, the unfair sentence. Now to Bahrain. We turn to Bahrain, where several prominent human rights defenders are still in prison, including my colleague Abdelhadi Al-Khawaja. Together with Nabil Rajab and myself, we are the co-founders of the Gulf Center for Human Rights. I have also to mention my friend who is still in detention, human rights defender, Dr. Abdul Singhes. Both you could see on the screen, hopefully now. So in 2011, we established the Gulf Center for Human Rights. Unfortunately, he was arrested, disappeared for 2 weeks, tortured, really severely tortured, that he needed 37 medical interventions and was taken then to prison where he remains serving a life sentence only for his peaceful and legitimate human rights work. I am pleased to introduce my colleague, Sayyid Ahmed Al-Wada'i, an exiled Bahraini human rights defender who fled violence and persecution at the hands of Bahraini authorities for participating in pro-democracy protests in 2012 and 2013. He co-founded with other colleagues the London-based NGO Bahrain Institute for Rights and Democracy, BAIRD. In recognition of his advocacy on Bahrain, really an advocacy that he is putting endless efforts in it. Sayed was awarded the Index of Censorship Award in 2020. So Sayyid Ahmed Al-Wada'i, Advocacy Director at the Bahrain Institute for Rights and Democracy, BAIRD, will speak now about campaigns to free human rights defenders such as our colleague Abdelhadi Al-Khawaja and our colleague Dr. Abdul Singhes. and reprisals facing Bahraini activists. Dr. Al-Senghisi remains on hunger strike since July 2021, protesting that his cultural research about Bahraini dialects has been confiscated. So we move to Sayed. Thank you a lot, Sayed. Yes. Now
Thank you,
we will hear
Khalid.
few words also later on from Mariam. Yes, Sayed.
Thank you so much, Khalid. Really great to be here. And I'm also like really grateful to hear from Ahdaf. And I just like was reading her piece in The Guardian, which was, I believe, published today, marking the 60th day of her sister hunger strike. I know how it feels. It must be extremely difficult to see your sister, 68 years old, to go through such a drastic action only to draw attention for severe injustice to her son. This is pretty much, there is similarities with the part which I'm about to speak about, which is related to Abdul Jalil Sengais. And I think there are some parallels between what we see in Ala's case and campaign and what Dr. Abdul Sengais is facing. But it's also like this is like really just a special day, as you know, the optimism when you see a ceasefire in Lebanon and the impact it have on the Lebanese, and our heart only can go to Gaza and what the people are facing there, and we hope to see that day, that an end of this genocide, and that would be the hope. Bahrain's story could probably differ from what we heard earlier, and I guess the start of the regional context. I mean, as we were witnessing the genocide in Gaza, Israel began to do things and without restrictions. And I remember the moment when they began to bomb the Iranian consulate in Damascus. Then we begin to hear that Iran was about to retaliate. The region was at the brink. Our region was on the brink of a full-wage war, and that sensitive time. During that sensitive time, it was a story in Bahrain's prison. Hussein Khalil was playing football, a political prisoner in Bahrain. Political prisoners at Jaw prison are in specific blocks, just like designated for political prisoners. He was playing football, and during Ramadan, he fell. And then there was a delay to get his first aid, and then it ended up he lost his life. The martyrdom of Hussein Khalil in the prison, his body coming out of the prison, was extremely devastating to his family, and also triggered the pain into hundreds of families of political prisoners. This is the worst scene they can see, is their son or their child is coming out from the prison, not free, but in a prison, in a coffin. And at the same time, within the prison walls at Jaw, Bahrain witnessed its biggest strike probably in the prison history. I'm talking about 1,000 political prisoners. They decided to refuse to return back to their cells. Some of them even break their door of their cell, or managed to find a way to break the door of their cell, and said, "We're not returning back until you free us." I thought this is a really courageous act for the prisoners to take this, and the scale of it was big. 1,000 is really massive. It's pretty much maybe 40% of the entire prison population. And then that density within Bahrain prison has also sparked a rare protest on the street by their family members. And then when we see the region is so hostile, and I guess it was the time for the King of Bahrain to say, okay, I'm going to release political prisoners. On that day, 8th of April, the king have decided to pardon over 1,500 prisoners. 650 of them were political prisoners. This was so personal to me because, among them was my brother-in-law, Sayyid Nizar al-Wada'i, And sadly, he served 7 years imprisonment in what the UN would call it was a reprisals for my activism in the UK. It was Ramadan night, and it was about the time when they broke their fasting. It was the time when they picked him up. So they went there and picked him up from where they released the prisoners. I cannot tell, like, because there was nothing to take us. The surprise was so overwhelming. At that time, my 2 kids were also like were in Bahrain. It was so emotional. They returned back home. And then I have his brother was also like detained at the same time, but that brother was detained because he attended what allegedly like it was about Gaza protests. So anything in solidarity with Gaza, with Palestine will land you in a prison. And then my second brother-in-law, Sayyid Hashim, was also arrested. It was during Sahur time, around the 3 a.m., like the time before we start the fasting on the next day. The family received the call. This time is to pick up the other brother, and they took him. My son, who's 9, was told, like, don't ruin the surprise. Like, the brother doesn't know that his other brother was released. And the 2 brothers, without knowing that the other brother was waiting at home until like he saw his other brother, which was also like just been released. They met together, and I cannot tell you what this moment meant. You could see it. I mean, I would try to share the video link later, just to see the emotion, the power of how brothers, which were deprived for over 7 years from hugging each other. It's a simple act, but in Bahrain, when you are in prison, then you have to deal with a glass barrier. A lot of these devastation things, we hear them in Egypt as much as we hear them in Bahrain. But so it was a special day, and it opens a new chapter for real hope, for maybe it could come to an end of the ordeal of the political prisoners who've been there since 2011. Then we waited for Eid al-Adha. It's the second thing that where the king usually would pardon prisoners. We thought at this time the king would release the rest of political prisoners. Those hopes were diminished when pretty much a handful of political prisoners were only the one released. In September this year, the king was stating he was celebrating his jubilee, his silver jubilee, 25 years since he ruled Bahrain. And again, it was a surprise where people in September, over 500 of them were released. When about 140 of them were political prisoners. That brought the number of political prisoners to its lowest. But sadly, this time again, prominent human rights defenders such as Abdul Hadi al-Khawaja or Dr. Abdul Sengais, and even Bahrain's oldest political prisoner, Hassan Mushaymi, who was 76, was excluded from these releases. The message could be clearer. The leaders of 2011 movement who were imprisoned because they demand or they called for democratic change in Bahrain, there is no way Bahrain would release them, because I think part of the complexity in this is Bahrain, one of the very few countries which, among 2 Gulf states which normalized with Israel. And I think they fear that the release of Abdul Hadi al-Khawaja, who despite his prison cells would stand in solidarity with Palestine, even if it means he will go on his own to chant in support of Palestine and slogans against the Israelis and so on. I think honestly, like the similarities when I talk about the hunger strike is I would say the case of Dr. Abdul Sengais, I think he decided to start his hunger strike in July 2021, and the reason for it is because authorities have confiscated his research, a research that he spent 4 years within the very limited resources in the prison. He wrote it by hand, and it was about Bahrain dialects. To take away this work from him, his sweat, I think he resorted to one thing, to tell about the injustice he was facing, and that was hunger strike. That has been now exceeded 3 years, and he is still refusing to take solid food. He is relying on multivitamin supplements to keep him surviving. And it also like shows how the determination of this person. I think that there was a time when Ala himself was on hunger strike for over 200 days. I think there was also like the similarity about how political prisoners sadly will resort to hunger strike just to deliver their message. When Obama was the president in the US, I think he began to lecture the world about democracy and change and so on. And I think in response, Dr. Abdul Sengais wrote a piece and it was published in the New York Times. I will quote part of what he stated. Sengais stated, "Be careful when you use the words change, dream, and democracy. Those things don't come so easily to us." End quote. It's really sad. These things are like really like whatever we're seeing, whatever we're hearing from Sengais, he is reminding us by his resilience that how difficult these things. It is so heartbreaking to see one of the brightest Bahrain academics who once was the head of the mechanical department at the Bahrain University, and instead of leading and teaching students which could take which he would educate the next generation Bahrain, and instead of benefiting from his knowledge, his skills, he continued to suffer in Bahrain bars. And it's high time that Dr. Sengais, Abdul Hadi Al-Khawaja, Hassan Mushayma, Sheikh Ali Salman, all political prisoners, those on death row, all of them should be released. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sayyid Ahmed. Now we will hear a few words from Abdul Hadi's daughter, our colleague Mariam Al-Khawaja, who used to be the co-director of the Gulf Center for Human Rights. She is still with us as a consultant. We will have a video from her. Yes, thank you.
In less than a month, on December 16th, my dad will have spent a harrowing 5,000 days in prison for no reason other than standing up against injustices in Bahrain. 5,000 days is 5,000 days too many, and we need the Danish government and international society to secure his release before this heartbreaking milestone. 5,000 days is far too long to miss out on life simply for advocating for freedom and democratic reform. So I invite you all to step into my father's shoes and to reflect on what would you have missed if you had been unlawfully imprisoned for the past 5,000 days. That's almost 14 years. What achievements or cherished moments would have been lost if you were confined without cause? For me personally, I would have missed watching my nieces and nephew come into this world, to watch them grow older, to see, pictures and videos of their first steps, their first words, their first laughs. I would have missed out on so many friendships and communities that I've become a part of. I would have missed out on the experience of growing with this world and the changes that come with it, and watching how people come together time and time and time again when things sometimes feel hopeless and like they're not going to change. I would have been a different person if I had spent the last 5,000 days in prison.
Thank you, Mariam. And Mariam, 2 years ago, she got a serious sickness, and instead of hiding away, she decided to use this sickness to campaign for Palestine and for the release of her father. That is Mariam Al-Khawaja. No doubt, we will wish our colleague Abdul Hadi, Dr. Abdul Sengais, all the other prisoners, including Ahmed Mansour, Ala, Ahmed Al-Rukun, Mohammed Mansouri, Dr. Mohammed Qahtani in Saudi Arabia, and all the others. We wish them an immediate release. Now I will pass the mic to my colleague Marwan.
Thank you, Khalid, and solidarity to Mariam, and I hope she will be reunited with her father very, very soon. Now, let me introduce Shiva Nazarahi, who will read poetry by imprisoned woman human rights defender, Mahvash Sabit, who is an English pen case. Shiva is a human rights defender and women's rights advocate with over 2 decades of experience in promoting and protecting human rights. A former political prisoner herself, she has been arrested multiple times for her activism. Most notably, she spent 2 years in prison following her arrest in 2009 during the Green Movement. Since leaving Iran in 2018, Shiva has been living in Slovenia, and since 2020, she has been working as a researcher and campaign coordinator at MENA, an organization committed to supporting women human rights defenders and the feminist movement in the Swana region. In this segment on Iran, we'll also look at some art and cartoons from Atina Fargadani, who is also in prison. Shiva, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Marwa. Thank you for having me. I want first to express my solidarity and respect to all these political prisoners and their family whose stories we heard tonight. In Iran, we face a similar situation with hundreds of political prisoners unjustly imprisoned. Despite their circumstances, they continue their fight and resistance. And tonight, I'm very happy that I can talk about 2 of them, 2 courage and inspiring women now serving their sentence in Evin prison. So first, I'm gonna start with Atina Fargadani. Atina is an Iranian artist and cartoonist. She was sentenced to 6 years in prison on June 10th, 2024 for attempting to hang one of her political cartoons near the presidential palace in Tehran. For this current sentence, she has been detained since April 13, 2024. According to her lawyer, she refused to attend her trial at the Revolutionary Court, citing the court's lack of justice and fair trial principles. In 2015, she was arrested for the first time for creating a satirical drawing depicting Iranian parliament members as monkeys and goats in protest of 2 planned bills aimed at restricting access to contraception. She was sentenced to 12 years and 9 months in prison and released in May 2016 after a successful appeal. She is currently being held in Evin prison. So here there are some cartoons from Atina. You can see in the right, in the above, you can see one of the most cartoons of Atina. She was arrested the first time she was arrested for drawing this cartoon, showing Iranian congressmen represented with animal figures. This cartoon referred to a draft law of criminalization of voluntary sterilization. And then in the bottom, you can see another cartoon from Atina that showing, I think she's showing how men politicians in Iran decide over women's body, particularly in regard to mandatory hijab. And in the left side, you can see another cartoon by Atina that she drew her inmate Philo in 2016. I think there were more cartoons, but okay, yeah. Here we can see another cartoon by her. There are one cartoon in the left side that she is showing. She drew it for the week of a state in Iran, and that in this cartoon she is showing the Iranian state as the a scarecrow does nothing but in there to repress and scare people. And in another one, she drew the IRGC ward in Evin, the section that she was being held for months, I think, in solitary confinement. And in this draw, she tried to picture it as a cartoon, the IRGC ward in Evin prison, which is very famous among Iranian civil society and activists. Yeah, thank you. And here I'm gonna introduce Mahvash. Mahvash, first I should say I was in prison with Mahvash. I spent 1 year with her in Evin prison. So I was witnessing that how she spent time in prison and how she focused on poetry inside the prison. Mahvash is a poet and winner of the Writer of Courage Prize from PEN International Association. At present, Mahvash has spent over 12 years of her life behind bars, and at the end of her current sentence, she will have served a total of 20 years. Mahvash, who was one of the former leaders of Yaran Iran, Friends of Iran, which oversaw the religious affair of Baha'i community in Iran, was arrested along with Fariba Kamalabadi on July 2022. The Revolutionary Court in Tehran handed a 10-year prison sentence to Mahvash for accusation of founding and leading an organization aimed at acting against national security. Prior to this sentence, Mahvash was arrested in March 2008. After 2 years of temporary detention in a security prison, she was sentenced to 20 years in prison. This sentence was later reduced to 10 years, and Mahvash was finally released from prison in 2017. And just 5 years later, she was arrested again, and now she's serving another 10 years in prison. Here there is a, I'm gonna read one of her poem. The title is I Rose Up Again. Sunk in myself one hot, dusty morning, walking alone in the prison yard, I wandered along the length of the bar, pondering the minting of isolation and of doors, brooding on all these endless barriers and bolts and bars, and all the pointless flights and skirmishes and wars, and considering where I was and why the abuse was being flung against me, I began to wonder whether this confine really defined the limit of myself. And then I saw in the heart of the tar, in the middle of the road, from the dry earth's blistered core and the tones in the lumbering tarmac, deep down from within a crack in the ground at my feet, a few leaves sprouting, green and neat. And some days later, there they were again, bright green. Now in every nook and cranny all around, as far as the eye could see, there were thistles growing, thousands of leaves and stems and of shoots, scattered far and wide and bursting out of the prison yard. And I said to myself, Are you less than a weed then? Where's the life in your roots gone? Where's growth in your leaves, your stem? No stirring in you at all? For shame. And at that I felt the surge of the sap of a spirit blaze within. I'd become weak and weary and had fallen down, but the thistle made me rise again. Back on my feet, I stand firm and green growing, feel the power of thought again. Thank you, Marwa.
Thank you, Shiva, for sharing this very powerful poetry. We hope, of course, that Mahva Shatina and many of the Iranian men and women will be freed soon. And now we will move to Lebanon. And we see Umama on the screen already. So everyone, please welcome Umama Hamidou, an artist and experimental filmmaker in exile, who will read from her work, My Two Little Boys. We will also look at some of Umama's artwork while I quickly introduce her. Umama is born in Lebanon and currently based in London. She's an artist and a filmmaker. Her work addresses lived and shared experiences of immigration as she questions our relation to traumatic spaces, how the formation of the self is affected by separation from homeland and the exile's gaze. Umama has a BA in theater from the Lebanese University and an MA in performance from Goldsmiths University. She has presented her work at various galleries across the UK, including Whitechapel, Turner Contemporary, Modern Art Oxford, Toynbee Studios, Mosaic Rooms, New Art Exchange, and at festivals, including Otherfield Documentary Festival. Umama, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. So I would like to read you a text that I've written recently. My two little boys. A bird in the sky must have wings to fly. You too will fly, just like your mother and father. They came from faraway places. My two little angels. You will grow and you will speak in different languages. They will ask you where you are from. This is a question that is on so many minds. You must always be ready for it. Tell them it's impossible to know who you are, and that you can only feel the glimpses, that you belong to yourself before anywhere or anyone else. For geography of the self is always superior, is always primary. The earth welcomes you, and so does the sky, and the wind carries within it the scent of your ancestors. Take a deep breath. This is your starting point in each and every step. My two little boys. The bird laid her eggs on my windowsill. 5 hatchlings roamed in my room. They brought you to my life. Tell me, do you have any memories of being inside me? Did you watch me dancing with the birds? Did you hear my cries? What happened at the time was indescribable. I wasn't sure how I could shield you from it. You were in the becoming. Can I protect your innocence? Or should I let you learn about the world you are coming to? You have no choice. It's the same world I opened my eyes to, where captives revolt, fulfilling the eternal story of seeking justice, of love, of violence, of revenge and forgiveness, of everything at the same time. My precious two little boys, you must know that your blood is of a warrior's blood. I very much want to explain to you about the journey before you were born, but I'm not sure how to start. You are the son of immigrants, but aren't we all in a state of constant migration? The soul migrates to the body, and the body is always moving. You will feel the here and there in your mother's and father's psyche. You are the hybrid of the world, of all the emotions. I promise I will fight to my last breath to give you the best of life and protect you from the horrors of what we had to endure. But you must promise that you won't forget your roots. Remembering your roots doesn't carry any duty, but only love to the place that your mother and your father has had to leave. Don't worry about the contradictions you will face, for life is synonymous with death. The colonial place you are born into has been the source of angst, as well as the safety and security. and so was your ancestors' land. You only have to embrace. My little dreamers, I am writing this letter to you as I sit looking at the grey water of the English Channel. A friend told me the story of how it formed due to the flood that led to the collapse of land between what we now call France and England. I found it fascinating. I think about the bodies that tried to cross these waters. Perhaps if the land hadn't collapsed, they would have been able to arrive safely. Or perhaps they would have been detained upon arrival and sent to another point of refuge. For these bodies are destined to be labeled, either with death or illegality. I think of the Mediterranean, the Sea of Beirut, how I grew up looking at and trying to understand its depth. Once, I asked my father if the straight line, the horizon of the sea, is where the world ends. I remember him smiling. My souls of my soul, as for your own grandmother in Beirut, she says, nothing is more precious than your child except your grandchild. So far, she hasn't been able to lay her eyes on you except from behind a screen. When you were born, she was denied entry. I don't say this to make you feel contempt or to plant the seed of rejection or animosity in your heart, but rather for you to acknowledge and to understand. For knowledge is the key for making change, for fighting not only for your right, but also for the soul of the soul to stay alive. My two little boys, do you hear the sound of the sea? Can you see through the darkness of the night? Raise your heads high. You are your own entity. At the same time, an extension of all who made this journey. Your roots might be heavy, but you must never experience it as a burden, but rather as a blessing. Don't hesitate. Keep whatever is good for your own growth and shed the rest. Just know that you were not born in a void. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Umama.
Thank you.
That was very beautiful. Thank you. And now, as we move close to our event, we'd like to share some music from a Tunisian artist called Yasser HRDs, who tragically passed away at the age of 48 in August this year following a sudden health complication. HRDs was famous for his song Dima Dima, which became the anthem of the Tunisian Revolution, and he founded a band that carries the same name in 2005. Please join me in welcoming Yasser's niece, Frial HRDs Sharafuddin, who is a programs lead at one of our partner NGOs, MENA, for Human Rights and Civic Engagement. She will say a few words about her uncle and his music before we watch a video of his song, Spieken Sitli, Why Did You Forget Me?, which is a song about marginalized people. Over to you, Frial.
Thank you very much, Marwa. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I know that's a little bit difficult when we talk about Yasser, but Yasser HRDs is a Tunisian, or was a Tunisian artist and activist, was born on April 9, 16, and passed away this August 12 and 2024. He was named on the name of the Palestinian leaders Yasser Arafat, and in Tunisian people used to call him Yasser Mhabba. That means in Tunisian dialects, a lot of love, because he was full of love. Yasser originally was a plastic artist, but he ventured into engagement music through his guitar and his group Dima Dima in 2004. In 2021, Yasser traveled across Tunisia on his bike and guitar to reach the deeply region of this country, or the real Tunisia, according to him. Over years, Yasser sang for the love, for Tunisia, and for the revolution. His most famous song, as you said, Marwa, is Dima Dima. And this song was written in Switzerland when he was very far for Tunisia in 2003. Another notable song that marked the revolution of Tunisia, or the process of this revolution in Tunisia, is Spieken Sitli, Why Have You Forget Me? And that's express his frustration with the Tunisia for harming Tunisian people, for all what's happened to the marginalized people. But later he clarified to say that we have two Tunisia, We love the Tunisia the country, but we have a lot of problem with Tunisia the state. Thank you very much.
في نهار خريف كله سحاب، الدنيا ظلام والنسمة باردة، لا عنده كلام لا عنده أحلام، فارغ والعيون شاردة. في نهار خريف كله سحاب، الدنيا ظلام والنسمة باردة، لا عنده كلام لا عنده أحلام، فارغ والعيون شاردة. شبيك نسيتيني أنا اللي اسمك كاتب على جبيني، ريحة هواك مخبية في جنيني، مهما جفيتي عمري ما ننساك. شبيك نسيتيني أنا الفرشيشي والعياري والهمامي، جندوبي راسي فوق يا خضرا، عاشق جبال الكاف والقمرة. ماني نساي ماني بكاي، ما عندي أم من صغري عايش وحدي، ماني شكاي ما نعرف باي، تعلمت نص بركي النخل والهندي. ماني نساي وماني بكاي، ما عندي أم من صغري عايش وحدي، ماني شكاي وانا عارف باي، تعلمت نص بركي النخل والهندي. بك نسيتيني انا اللي اسمك كاتب على جبيني، ريحة هواك مخبية في جنيني، مهما جفيتي عمري ما ننساك. شبيك نسيتيني أنا القفص اللي في الداموس طيشتيني، وادي القفص اللي ضبلت عرجيني، رشفت عيوني أما قلبي ديما فيه. يا نسايا أنا اللي عندي معاك ألف حكاية، واحلف نكتب فيك ألف غناية، ونسكنك بين الوجع والروح. يا منايا من قبل الاستعمار منيتيني، من بعد الاستقلال خليتيني، من بعد 14 صوتي بحال. يا نكارة ما عاد نرجع زيت من زيتونك، ما عاد نحب الريحة من ياسمينك، ما عاد بيني وبينك كان اسمك. يا غدارة ما عاد نمن وعد من عيونك، صدري لين يشيل.
That's very beautiful. Thank you, Ferial, for joining us. I'll hand it now to you, Christina.
Thank you very much, Marwa. Thank you so much, Ferial. We're very sorry for your loss. It's actually kind of moving for me to watch Yasser singing, because I remember when he performed at the first Alternative Human Rights Expo in October 2021. He sang a folk song and played his guitar and his harmonica live for us. He was a very joyful man and a dedicated activist, and he will be greatly missed. And I've put in the chat a link to that video from our first expo. And that brings us to the end of our program for today. I'm Christina Stockwood, GCHR's Fundraising and Development Manager. So I would like to remind you, if you're able to make a donation today to contribute towards the event, you can go to our website and donate at gc4hr.org, support us. And you can find the video online at our dedicated website, www.alternativehrexpo.org, which we'll put in the chat. Finally, I would just like to thank all of our participants today, and all of our co-hosts, Marwa and Khaled, and to our wonderful interpreter. Thank you so much, acting solo, and for all the tech support, my colleagues Wiam and Michael, and to Simone Tice of Amnesty Westminster Bayswater, who we've been doing this event with since we started The Prisoner in the Pen. So thank you again for joining, and please do share the video with people who couldn't watch it today, and help us raise awareness of all the human rights defenders and activists unjustly in prison for their work across the region, including my dear colleagues Ahmed and Abdul Hadi, as well as all the others. Thank you very much.